The 2024 film Arcadian gained recent traction via clips on social media showing off the peculiar monsters in the movie. While most of the lore behind these creatures is left ambiguous, we can infer much about their ecology by their behavior in the film. With long faces, extending claws, and social living reminiscent of various vertebrate species, let's do a deep dive of these monsters. The first question one may have with the monsters is what's with the clacking? Throughout most of the film, the monsters spread their jaws and clash them together to produce a deafening noise, specifically at close range with their human prey. The reason why the creatures do this isn't specified. Due to the fact that they mainly do this up close and personal, it could be for stunning prey in place with a loud startling sound and then quick motions of the jaw. While it is strange, it isn't completely unheard of for animals to utilize sound in this way. However, it is mostly found underwater due to the greater density. By far, the most famous and well-studied example of this would be the pistol shrimp. When the large claw of the shrimp snaps shut at extreme speed, the sudden motion forces the surrounding water to cavitate, creating a vapor bubble. This bubble is the source of both sound and light. As it collapses, the implosion releases a sharp noise, while the intense pressure and heat generated within the bubble can get to 4,726 degrees Celsius, or 8,540 in Burger units. However, the creatures from Arcadian seemingly do this with high-speed clacking of their teeth rather than the heat, pressure, and sound combination that the shrimp uses. An animal that produces a similar sound in a similar way would be the shoebill stork. But they do this as a form of communication rather than hunting. Another potential comparison could be cetaceans, but the myth of them using their echolocation as a predatory mechanism has been widely contested, and is now treated as a myth. Another theory could be that rather than prey stunning, it could be a way for the creatures to communicate with one another, and the prey subjugation is simply a byproduct of the primary use. Or it could be both, with the creature snapping its jaws to stun prey, startle nearby people into running, and signaling to the pack to pick up any potential stragglers. Either way, it doesn't stop them from being obliterated by grade A American iron. From what we see, the creatures are social animals that don't have much in the way of infighting, and in fact seem very cooperative to the point of chaining together to form larger structures. This is a phenomenon observed in many Formicidea species, but most fittingly the army ant. The creatures seem to primarily hunt in large groups, but not always. We do see one individual try to hunt Joseph, only to be captured. It is interesting that when this individual is let out of the cage, instead of going immediately on the offense, it tries to crawl away and hide. The only reason why it lunged for Thomas was because Rocco forced it out of its corner.
Rocco, no! Rocco!
Part of this could be that it is weak and tired from the failed hunt and exposure to sunlight, but it could also be that the creature was experiencing high-level stress and lashed out when it perceived a threat. After all, the creatures are not invincible, and a pack of canis would easily dispatch one if it was caught. It is also possible that this is a young dispersing animal and it got unfortunate on its first solo hunt. It's unknown if the creatures have a dominance hierarchy for their specialization, as they look quite similar to each other and don't show a polymorphic caste system like army ants. Rather, it's likely that the creatures have a social system similar to that of naked mole rats. Naked mole rats are weird in general, but they're also weird in that, despite being mammals, they have a matriarchal structure much like eusocial invertebrates with a single breeding female and non-breeding individuals. While once thought to have a rigid caste system, new research shows that mole rats exhibit age-related polytheism. This is essentially where an animal in a social unit takes on different roles in the group as it ages. For the queen herself, if they're anything like naked mole rats, then it is likely that any female in the colony can become queen. While this could be a simple show of strength, in scenarios where both are evenly matched, it could be a bloodbath, as females use their impressive jaws and claws to snap at each other until one is dead. However, aside from that, there might not be any aggression between individuals of the same colony. They work together very well and don't seem to fight in any scenes. This does bring in the elephant in the room, however. If they're like naked mole rats, then there is a possibility that the queen mates with their adult sons. As a surprise to no one, this can result in extreme inbreeding depression in mole rats, with a 2007 study on a captive population finding that inbred individuals were over 300 times more likely to die when infected with coronaviruses. While there could be some inbreeding, it likely isn't as steep as seen in mole rats. We don't know if the creatures are nomadic or hold a set territory, but based on their behaviors, I'd say the latter. If this is the case, then dispersal mores might come into play. Mole rats, of course, have their own version of one, where a unique individual breaks off from the main colony to start a new one. Again, this individual is likely what we see trying to get into the house. It could just be the lighting, but the creature appears slimmer, grayer, and smaller than the rest of the creatures we see. Then again, these creatures could also fission as well, and new colonies might form in the outer reaches of a much larger one. Throughout the film, the creature's presence is almost always accompanied by roaches. While this may seem bizarre, it isn't completely out of the ordinary for burrowing animals to have relationships with insects. Gopher tortoises have a whole slew of invertebrates that accompany them as they burrow, such as the aptly named gopher tortoise corpus beetle. These beetles live exclusively within the tortoise's nest, being a commensal species to the tortoise. This is essentially where you benefit from one species and they don't get anything in return, but they also don't get harmed from your presence. While it could be the case that the creatures have little interest in the roaches, there could be some mutualism between both species. Nearly all roach species are decomposers, feeding off of detritus in their respective ecosystems. With the vast number of members in the colonies, there's going to be many things left behind for the roaches to feed on. Blood, feces, exposed root and tubers, and buried plant animal matter that would attract more unwanted pests. The cockroaches might even directly feed on the matter that accumulates on the creatures, helping themselves to a buffet of dead skin, dirt, and biomatter that might otherwise be a hindrance. The creatures might even use the roaches to determine if you're part of the colony or not, detecting unique odors among them and smelling if you're familiar. It may seem odd for animals to want what we would consider pests in their homes, but it is not unusual. Many birds that display little nest cleaning behavior prefer ones that have certain fly larvae in them to clean up fecal matter, dead chicks, and food scraps. The fly larvae don't eat living tissue, or even can't, so in the dusty, sweaty tunnels of the creatures, cockroaches may be a valuable ally to keep themselves healthy. Finally, one of the strangest aspects of these creatures is the stomach mouth that they use to feed. Instead of using their massive heads, the monsters pin their prey down and spray their stomach acid onto them before retracting their stomach to envelop them. While no terrestrial vertebrate does this, many invertebrates do, the most similar of which are the starfish family. Starfish literally eject their stomachs out of their mouths, secrete digestive enzymes onto prey, and then slurp up the liquefied tissues back in. The individual that ate Mrs. Rose seemed to envelop her, although based on the size of the stomach, it isn't nearly as big as to hold her entirely. The camera cuts before we see what happened, so it's likely that the creature crushed her with the force of its stomach muscle, or that she was quickly killed by the spray of acids. Regardless, it can be assumed that her fate wasn't nearly as grisly as the victims of the Star Lasso experience from Nope, although still a horrible way to go. While not picking off humans, it is also likely that they simply eat things close to our body mass and easily pinned down, like smaller ungulates. It's unknown if the creatures can eat with their enormous heads, but based on what we see, it's hard to make a definitive conclusion. It might be a case of the mutations that caused this monster to exist just making them have two mouths. We could fancifully suggest that the heads and throats are so well adapted to the clacking muscles that the esophagus is merely atrophied. In any case, it's clear that while formidable, the creatures aren't immune to the common horror trope of unlimited shotgun ammo. Overall, I really liked the creatures from Arcadian. While the movie itself was alright and didn't do particularly well, it gained recent traction due to the darker depths on TikTok, which made a video that grossed over 1 million views just showing various clips of the monsters. And the reactions were people being genuinely disturbed by the monsters, which tells a lot from their design. With a lot of film just slapping sharp teeth on a design or just continuously ripping off the Quiet Place aliens, which themselves rely on Primeval's future predator tropes, a funky, gangling-looking freak was always going to stand out, rather than just the row of usual razors. It's one of my favorite tropes of all time, and I'd like to see more creature designers implementing it. The sound design of these monsters is also phenomenal, with their distorted wails and groans sounding so human and nerve-wracking. And also the noises they make when they move, with their joints snapping and their saliva squelching whenever they move. There appearance and movement is also phenomenal, looking so uncanny when they crawl with insect-like irritability despite their mostly mammalian design. Given the small budget, it's impressive how well they're able to animate them in certain shots. One thing I will say though, is that I would have preferred if they were herbivores. Herbivorous creatures are underrepresented in film media, as it's assumed that if something eats meat, it's automatically going to be an aggressive killing machine, when many herbivores hold the human-wildlife conflict high score. The creatures would have just killed the humans out of competition and territoriality. But this is a small nitpick, and at the same time I do enjoy the absolute strangeness of their feeding strategy. The scene where the individual eats Mrs. Rose is genuinely disturbing, especially with how erratically it's paced, the clacking of the jaws, and how genuine her screams sound. So kudos to the actress Samantha Coughlin for her performance. Plus, it's just nice to see something that doesn't rely on excessive gore for shock value and lets your imagination do the most work for you.